What
he
are
was
you
a broke
implying
escort that didn't have any money.
You're saying he was an escort? What is your case?
Well, I rented an apartment to Mr. Schmuckowetsky over here, a broke male escort.
How do you spell that? Schmeckalepsy? How do you spell that?
I think it's S-C-A-M-O-C-K.
No, I'm just being... Stop
Yeah,
it.
I know.
Okay. Be respectful. Okay, Mr. Miller, yes.
Well, and I met him through a previous tenant of mine that rented from me 4 years ago. That was a good guy, and he paid his rent on time. And I had no problem collecting his half of the rent. But from the get-go, this maggot tried to worm his way out of paying his monthly rent. He was late the first half a year, and then he just stopped paying in January. This is way before the pandemic, and I don't know why he thought he didn't have to pay. I had a friend of mine living upstairs who was pestered by the guy. He was always hitting on the guy. He eventually moved out, and I had to take a loss in the middle of the winter in February, where it's real cold here in Minnesota, and rent it for $100 less than what I was normally getting for the rent. I don't know where he got off thinking that he didn't have to pay the rent.
What is the relevance of the fact that he had friends coming over, these guys coming over?
He
What are
was
you
a broke
implying
escort that didn't have any money.
You're saying he was an escort?
Well, that's what it appeared to be with all the traffic. He had 3 different guys a day he'd have coming over to the place.
If he couldn't afford their rent, he wasn't doing very well.
Well, I can't speak to that, but
just-
he's not the most appetizing looking guy.
Well, let's hear from you, Ryan.
I met the plaintiff in June of 2019 to sign the lease, my roommate. From July till December, things were relatively okay, at least from my perspective. In December, I changed jobs, and so there was a delay in my income for a couple of weeks, and I was trying to deal with that. As the month went on, I let him know that I was going to get paid on a certain date, on January 17th. There was a delay with the new company as far as no direct deposit. It was mailed. I wanted to work out a potential payment plan if it became an issue for me as far as the late getting payment
You
from
didn't
work.
make one payment over a half a year.
How many other months were you not paying?
Once communication completely broke down, and then he filed this case, then I'm like, well, that's when we'll have to work the situation out. The last time I paid would have been in December, so January is when it stopped. But I didn't make that decision until all of this threatening emails that came from him, the voicemails, which is also a part of the evidence that I kept getting from him. It just wasn't a comfortable situation.
Well, can I hear the
for me at all.
voice? Okay, all right, let's take a look at some of that.
Hey, buddy, you don't want to return my phone call. You don't want to work with me. You better start looking for another place to live. Okay? You lied to me. You said you're going to have it on the 17th. Now you tell me it got mailed on the 17th. It's the 25th. It doesn't take 8 days. Okay? I want you out. Just leave. You got to go. All right? That's it, Ryan. You are going to have a judgment against you, not only for the rent, but you're going to have trouble renting a doghouse after there's a UD on your file. And then we garnish your wages, and I collect. So you get out.
Okay, now I admit he sounds like he could be in a De Niro movie.
He was talking to the upstairs tenant about me, which was information that didn't need to be shared. As far as also calling me an escort, which is not true nor appropriate. It became to the point where it felt very unsafe. And we go through this pandemic, we're on lockdown, and he's wanting to show the apartment and bringing people in during this lockdown.
Well, in June and July.
No, during the lockdown of the pandemic. During
the
there's an
last
email.
couple months of the tenancy, I started showing it because they weren't going to renew the lease. And I actually didn't rent it. I took 2 months of loss because of the pandemic. I had some people that were going to rent it, but then they lost their jobs.
Your Honor, if you look at
there's
evidence...
no excuse for this guy not paying the rent.
I understand there was a breakdown in the communication you would have liked, and I understand that. But as long as you're living there, you understand you need to be paying the rent. And he has the right then, if you're not paying the rent, to seek to have you evicted or bring a court case. I mean, all what he was saying was truthful. I mean, he wasn't like threatening you. He wasn't like going to say you're going to sleep with the fish.
But the communication was very inconsistent as far as me trying to work something out with him, but he would not even give me his email. I had to fish for that to get that information, just to get
He had my
communication with him.
email, he communicated with me, he didn't pay any rent. He promised to pay the rent, but I
Until
never
you
saw
started
any
threatening
green.
me.
Why wouldn't you have been paying at least what you could at the time?
With the threats and then him talking to other tenants and just all this false information.
Well,
that he's
that's a
been providing,
separate action.
I felt
Okay.
unsafe.
The feeling of being unsafe, were there any specified threats made to you other than bringing legal action for not paying rent?
Well, the fact, Your Honor, that he was talking to another tenant about the situation, also...
The other tenant was talking to me about it and complaining incessantly.
nothing to
You were
complain
hitting
about.
on him, he didn't want to have nothing to
Which
do with
isn't
him, you were
true.
getting drunk on the
I
front
saw
steps
him maybe
on the
twice
stoop.
over 6 months.
6 months, I got not a dime from you.
You clearly owe the rent for January, February, and March. For those 3 months, I can't even come up with a theory why you wouldn't have
And
to pay
April.
for the rent. And you probably have to pay for April because it's 10 days in April, which practically says that he can't suddenly find another tenant for the rest of the month. What this suit is about is, did you fulfill the requirements of the lease, which says I have to pay this amount of money every month? And you didn't, and therefore I have fined for the plaintiff $5,000. Thanks for watching. Now please approach the bench. The way I look at it, you have two options here. Option A, watch more Judge Jerry. Option B, watch more Jerry Springer. The choice is yours. Now get out of my courtroom. You have more clips to watch. And don't forget to subscribe.